call to order this special meeting of the Stevensville School Board of Trustees. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're pleased to gather this afternoon and into this evening to conduct interviews with our finalists for the district superintendent position. We'll start off by taking roll. Dan. Jennifer? Here. Tony? Here. Stephanie? Here. I'm here. Ben? Fran? Here. Billy? Billy is not here, and Nathan. Here. All right, so 7 of our 8 trustees are here this evening, and our agenda tonight is the interviews of the finalist candidate positions. Since this is a special board meeting, we'll have a quick open for, is there any board comment that's not related to tonight's agenda? Is there any public comment that's not related to tonight's agenda? All right, thank you all. Well, we're excited to get going here. A few things to go over as related to our process tonight. So every trustee has the candidates the questions rather, that were compiled. These questions are a blend of things that were asked by the faculty and staff and administration here at the district, the trustees, and then some other external and community input too. And so really appreciate all parties bringing together so many items for questions. We had a huge question bank to pull from and narrowed it down to the ones that you see in front of you. We will ask all questions, and so it's equitable and consistent for all candidates. And so all questions will get asked regardless of where we're at with time. We'll make sure every candidate is asked, every question has an opportunity to answer those. Trustees are welcome to write on these. You'll get a new copy for every candidate that we interviewed. This will be turned in. These are not your notes. These get turned in to VIA, and then they will be held. They'll be held in the file for up to 2 years or for a 2-year period in case they need to be looked back on. So keep that in mind as you make your notes and as we do through this process. So we're pleased to have Tom Korst with us tonight as our 4:30 interview. And so in lieu of introductions, we'll let our nameplates stand for themselves there, and we appreciate you being here for an interview tonight. I'll start with the first question, and then we'll move left with the next questions, and we'll loop around to Dan, and we'll continue that way asking questions. And so thank you, Mr. Korst. So we know a little bit about you from your application, but others in the room, members of the audience may not. Can you go ahead and tell us about yourself?
So first of all, thank you for just this opportunity. It's important. I know the work you guys do. I've been in schools for a long time, and to be a trustee it's a lot of work, and it's the fabric, I think, of our nation and what it keeps our schools going. So I appreciate your time. Very efficient introduction to the interview, by the way. I wish I could do that. A lot of times I stumble around and not stay as focused. So great job. Myself, I'm a Montana kid. I grew up in Great Falls. I guess the benchmarks, I got to play football with both Dave Dickinson and Ryan Leaf. Take that for what it's worth. Went to school at Western Montana College to become a teacher. Early on in my childhood, I was able to connect with teachers, and that inspired me to become my best self, I felt like. And I didn't realize at the time I had this natural calling to be a teacher. So I began coaching, did lots of sports, swimming instructor, ski instructor, etc. I love the educating. I love working with people to be, again, better selves. Taught for a few years in Nevada, came back to Montana, taught for a while. Wasn't sure if that's what I really wanted to do. When you're making $18,000 in Highwood, Montana, you start to ask yourself, can I actually live off this? So I had a fork in the road to either become an attorney. I was studying for the LSAT. Don't know if I would have passed it. Or I became a principal in a town called Blair, Montana, at a very young age. I spent some time there, became the superintendent shortly after that, went to Seeley Lake, spent time there, became part of Missoula Public Schools, went to Havre. In the last 13 years, I was in Hamilton, Montana, where I've raised 2 kids. I have a senior that's going to graduate this year in junior. So the question usually gets asked, what the heck happened last fall? I'll just answer that right now. For 13 years, 28 years of education, I had looked at an opportunity. So where am I really going to be? I don't mean superintendent you've had here, but 13 years is a long run. I had 2 years on my contract. But I started thinking on the road, where do I want to go? What makes sense? I didn't really want to leave Montana. A lot of administrators retire and they'll go to another state and kind of double dip, stuff like that. I didn't necessarily want to do that. So I explored working with the healthcare world, Western Montana Mental Health. Took that job on in November. I felt like our district is in a great shape. We had all the right pieces in place, had a good plan. Talked to our board chair and said, I just want to try this. I might be maybe overambitious, could be crazy. I don't know, but I have to know. Took the job. It's Western's been actually good to me. I can't really complain a whole lot, but I am concerned about the long-term sustainability, given just all the issues that we have with funding, both state and federal. So, and I also learned in this time that I like this work. Did it for a really long time. I took a little break and I realized how much I missed it. I basically work in some isolation. It's interesting. That is a traumatic experience being a superintendent. I'd say it's like go from the hot and cold for sure. And so anyway, I guess that's probably the next question. That's a bit about me at this point in time. Now, where am I really? Well, I'm 50. I want to work for a while. I don't see anything in the next 10 to 20 years that tells me not going to be something. I really hope I see the value of being in a district for a long time. And you need to be picky about that. Going someplace for 1 or 2 years, I'm not in a stepping stone situation. I have no interest in being a double A superintendent at this time. I don't know if I ever will. I like the size of a district. This is the Goldilocks zone for me. So anyway, I probably don't go to the next question too much.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Next question is, what drew you to apply for the application here for this position?
Well, a combination of things. I would say that when I started thinking about what I had, honestly, like, okay, is this my right life choice at this time? January-ish. I really thought about that. And but where do I want to go? I think it could be an option. Not a terrible option. But then obviously my job is vacated. Dave went to Hamilton. Geez, that's interesting. I didn't think that would, there was no plan for anything like this. I thought, well, no, that makes another argument. Should I consider Stevensville? And I kind of thought about it, and I'll tell you, anybody taking on this role, if you do it right, it's a heavy lift. It is part of you all day long. You have to understand it. If you haven't experienced it, it's just wherever you go, you're going to get asked those questions. Why can't we do fireworks in the high school parking lot, stuff like that? So anyway, I look at a town like this. You guys probably had those conversations. And I know it. I understand it. I like the valley. I guess a short story. My great grandfather homesteaded this area. Frederick Burdett was shot and killed in Tammany Bar in 1902. Left 4 kids behind. The youngest is I think is Eugene Burdett, which is my great grandfather. He died fly fishing in the Bitter River. My grandpa moved to Great Falls and he died a more natural death. But I guess for whatever reason, since I've been here, there's a real calling to this valley and a real interest in staying here. I've thought about leaving. I thought about going somewhere else, and it's really hard to. So I suppose on one hand, the opportunity to stay in this valley is a huge issue for me. I like this area. I would like to move this direction. Ideally, I do think it's better to live in the community. That's just me. I think you should live in the community. I got a senior. I got to get through 1 year. She's a flag football phenom and pole vaulter. Get her through. If you guys had flag football and pole vault, we could have a conversation, but I don't think you're going to get in place by next year. So I got to get her through. Then after that, I'm an empty nester, and I like this area. A little closer to Missoula. That could be good and bad. We'll just leave it at that. But for the good parts, closer to Missoula. And I think Stevensville, and I said this earlier, and I don't know how it comes across. I hope it sounds positive and exciting, but I think Stevensville is on the verge. I think Hamilton was on the verge when I went there, becoming something pretty amazing. It has that chance. It's right there. You can see the people you're talking to in the hallways. You can see who they are, facility. It's like right there. And that's a cool place to be, in my opinion. So all those stars line up professionally. And I think I come to you, I'm much more skilled. I went to Hamlin, I was 37. I was about as green as you could get in some ways. B had to pull me aside a couple times and, straighten me out. But I think over that time, I acquired just different skill sets, better understanding what this is all about, and just a better communicator. So I hope wherever I land with getting a better, more finished product than that guy they hired 13 years ago that probably was in shock for about 3 years.
What's the most important first steps as superintendent? What's the most important first steps a superintendent should usually take in the division?
Of course, I forgot my cheaters, but that's all right. I think the most important thing you do is you have to learn the organization. You seek first to understand before being understood. Yes, you have to bring some things to the table, but your ability to really listen and develop trust, relationships, so that people will talk to you, both in the organization itself, teachers, staff, students, and the community, is paramount to your success. If people don't see you as likable and approachable, someone they can talk with, and actually ask why I can't light fireworks off high school parking lot, which I have friends that ask every time I see them, they don't feel comfortable asking you that, then I think you're going to have yourself a big problem. So I think just getting to know the school, the community, being available, people know where you are and you're approachable is a huge, huge, huge first step. Because after that, everything builds off of it. If you're not likable, you're not approachable, it's not going to go well. That's just my 2 cents for that one. So my first step is to get to know as many people, learn, listen to more than I talk, and understand where you're going. You guys have a plan probably, or some version of one. And now maybe you're just trying to maybe tighten it up a little bit, but you have a direction you're heading. And so I would want to learn about that as much as possible and community, how it sees the school district.
Dan?
What are your 4 greatest strengths as a K-12 administrator?
I think when you think about leading an organization, whether it's K-12, whatever it is, I think the strengths that are answered in some questions, I think I put this in my response to you, but I think there are 4 questions I live by. So if I'm leading a group and I give them this set of questions, can I trust you? Okay, how much? A lot? A little? What? Do you care about me? Are you committed to excellence? And what's your track record? Those 4 things that have to be answered well by the people you're leading. And just think about it for yourselves. If you've ever been led by somebody or been a coach, that coach, you go, yeah, that coach cared about me. I trusted that coach. They were committed to being great, and they had an amazing track record. You can lead a lot of people in that frame, but that's where you have to start. If you don't think that you've earned their trust, you don't think that they think that you care about them, you're not committed to excellence, you don't have a track record, you're gonna have a heck of a time. So those are the things I look at. So as K-12, maybe the question's asking, how do I deal with kindergartners through the big kids? Well, I have 2 of my own, and I used to teach 4-year-old swimming lessons and 4-year-old skiing and t-ball. They ever taught skiing lessons to 4-year-olds, and it's a lot of work. Or t-ball. If anybody's ever put yourself through the misery of coaching t-ball, you can empathize. But you do it for a reason, and you like it. I've worked at every level. I've been a high school coach. I've actually been a college coach for a while. My background is business and English. I've taught 5 through 12. A lot of these LSC schools, you teach 5th graders on up. Every age level is great. In fact, when your kids turn 18, I think you have that moment. You go, man, I miss them when they were 5, or miss them when they're 7, and you look back on those days and you go, those are gone. So all those age categories are so much fun, and you grow to appreciate them all the way up to when they're 18. And I hear when they turn 22 and 23, it's fun again. But there's about a 5-year skip in there that kind of other stuff happens. We'll see if that's true or not. But as far as K-12 goes, the people, the teachers, I love all those age groups, but I think organizationally, I strive for those 4 things no matter what I've done.
Tell us about your experience creating a district budget and utilizing various funding sources.
It's usually on a crayon and a napkin, but I'm teasing. I think that's the thing that I spent my most time with the last 13 years in Hamilton. People ask, how did you get to above average pay in your teachers with below average? How did you do that? Well, you got to work at it. And, you know, when you ask me, how do you negotiate? Well, you don't negotiate for 2 weeks. You negotiate all year. You create a long-term strategic plan, 2, 3, 4, 5 years out. Okay, so your budget, why I talk about this, 80 to 90% of your budget is going to be staff. Like it or not, that's what it's going to be. Now, you could try to do less. I don't think that's going to go very well. So you got to have a handle on so starting off, how do you do this? You better have an accurate handle on your numbers. You need to spend the time. Every little nook and cranny, everything you've got. What are we spending our money? Why are we spending it there? Part of my job at Western right now is doing that. I'm going through contracts and asking why we have 15 storage units in Florence. Do we need 15? It costs. So you start looking at all those things. You get that accuracy. And then I think the next step is forecasting. How good are you at forecasting? You do that now. I'm talking 3 years out. Okay, on top of 3 years out, best case scenario, worst case scenario, most likely. We know worst case scenario what could happen. We're aware that we lose 20 kids, whatever happens, this is what we consider a worst case. Best case looks like this, and this case looks like that. So as far as budgeting goes, accuracy, having a handle on what you actually are spending money in now, and then working with the board to say, is this what we want to do? Do we need 15 storage units in Florence? And that's a silly question, but you're going to have those kinds of questions in your budget. Is this our intention? Or is this just because it's been there for a long time and else to do with it? So I'm a pretty intentional person, and I say, okay, let's take a look at all the facts. Okay, now is this where we actually want to put our money? As far as budgeting goes, it's an ongoing. Like went to Hamilton, they started budgeting in October. So now you're budgeting all year, every day as you add and subtract stuff. You're seeing what's happening in your budget all the time. It's not a one-time event.
So describe your experience with prioritizing the needs of the district with budget realities.
Yeah, so I think that's really having some heart to heart. What is the vision, mission? Those are fun and lofty statements that maybe are appealing. Then I'm just that guy that says, okay, how are you gonna do that? We can have that comment, but what are you gonna do? What are those 4 or 5 steps can take us kids there? I don't like platitudes. I mean, they're nice, they get on the wall. Well, what are you actually going to do? What concrete steps are you going to do to make that thing happen? How intentional do you want to be? So I think what it really boils down to with that is just having those conversations. Here are the facts. Here's where we're spending money. Here's some options we can think about. Here's what we can do. How do we want to approach this as a group? I think I come to you with recommendations. I think I come to you, here's some thoughts. Working with the admin team, working with staff, working with the union. Again, the union's in this process too, by the way. As far as I'm concerned, the union's got to be there all year long. You can't just say, well, we'll see you in March when we negotiate for 2 weeks and hope it ends quick. No, it's all year long. You're having a constant conversation with them so that they can feel a part of this. They can see the long-term strategy. They can see where you're headed. As far as with the board, I think it just comes down to, if you already have an established mission and vision, is that being seen through in your budget? If you don't have one, well, great one. Because if you don't have a plan, then, well, anything's a good idea, right?
Thank you, Tom. What is your vision for the Stevensville schools, and what do you believe is the best way to get students, faculty, and community members involved in that vision?
Well, again, I think it's about forming immediate relationships, being present, being available, meeting people, getting to know everybody from staff and community. As far as a vision goes, I mean, so if you're asking me my personal vision about what education is, I really believe education is how we're facilitators to help students write their own success stories. When I went to school, high school, you use college or bust, right? You got to go to college. If you don't go to college, it could be a problem. I have a doctorate. Okay, I was a 2.7 GPA kid in high school. I didn't see the value in school, didn't understand it. My son comes to me every day, very academically gifted. Says, Dad, what if I want to be an electrician? I said, that's a heck of a plan. Let's talk about that. There are lots of ways to succeed in this world. Don't get caught up and you have to do one or the other. Now you decide based off that information, but I'm not going to tell you what's best for you. You got to think this through. And I think schools have to do a better job in the long game of helping kids understand the spectrum of opportunities that are out there. Leading to one or two that we like, but say, no, there's a lot that you could be explored. And here are the advantages. We have a Bitterroot Public Charter School. I don't know everybody to apply for them. What does that do? It's a catapult towards career or college. Wherever you're going, we are helping you get there quicker in Hamilton. So DJ's Electrics comes in, talks to our students. Says, here's what this looks like. Come work with me in 4 years, 8 years. Here's the game plan. So I think the vision, if I start with, is what's the long game? Where do we want to end? Well, we want to put kids in a position where they can be very successful, write their own success stories, like in kindergarten and first grade, second grade, all the way through. There's other things, I suppose I mean, not just all academics, but athletics, things like that. There's all of it. Be good at all of it.
What strategies would you support and or implement to maintain and increase enrollment here at Stevensville?
Well, I do those things very well. Hamilton was struggling too. And you start to create an atmosphere that's too hard to, well, why would you leave? That's a question I ask people. That's great. I think Corvallis is a fine school. I put my kids in Hamilton. Sorry, Pete, if you're listening. It's as simple as that. Pete would say the same thing about me. We got a good school district, got a good thing here. This is the best place. You want to go check something out? I guess, but you are leaving an amazing place. So you have to be great for people to want to be a part of it. You can't coerce them, or there's just got to be an appeal. How do you get back to that? How do you get back to a place where people say, geez, how do I get my kids in that school district? I don't care where I live. How do I get them there? And how to do that? I mean, it's all of these things. Teacher compensation, sadly, yes, Hamilton does take some of your teachers. It may be time to repay them back someday. But there's a way to do that. You just got to have that energy and that creativity. And it's not going to happen overnight. You got to be dedicated 2, 3, or 5 years possibly, but it starts. So I think enrollment, it's all about what do you offer? Why do I want to be there? What's the advantage? Why is it great? Why should I? Think of them as customers. For you that are business owners, why do they go to your business? Okay, and I ask teachers on the hallway, I think everybody's got to echo the same sentiment at some point in time. You go to Stevensville because of this. When that gets told over and over and over and over, becomes who you are, all of a sudden you have something.
What experience do you have with PLC Plus?
Professional learning communities? Yeah, I think collaboration, I think that's a strength, and there's lots of acronyms out there, teaming, et cetera. But I think the real value is, do you have real conversations about academics, real conversations, real data, real actions? I've known a lot of places that claim they have the PLC or this or that, but at the end of the day, like, what are you trying to accomplish? We're trying to use the collective power of this group of people to make informed decisions, to make us a better team. I don't care how you do it or what you call it. The idea is that you look at the same amount of data, same kind of data, and make decisions based off that. And I think you got to be careful. So I think we can really get caught up in this world of quantitative data, overly quantitative, but there's always a story in the data too. So you got to do both. You can't just say, well, it's only, did we make it or not make it? Well, maybe you didn't make it, but man, you grew. That's a lot more important than you still made it, but you backed it. That happens too. So the conversation is both quantitative and qualitative. And I think we often get too enamored with numbers, which are important. My dissertation was a quantitative dissertation. But what's in those numbers? What's the story behind it? How do we change? So the PLC, I think you're just using a collective group to make great decisions.
Building a strong relationship with staff, administration, teachers, and community is critical for the success of any district. How do you plan to develop and maintain meaningful connections with each of these groups, ensuring open communication, trust, and collaboration?
Like with communication, there's, if it comes up again, I didn't read ahead. But I think there's two paths, or the formal and informal process. Formal process is the things that you intentionally put out there, district newsletters. If you have annual reports, we used to do them, then COVID hit and kind of fell off. I think they're important. Whatever social media you use, whatever your structured communication process in your system. Okay, and what's the message, right? You need to get that tidied up. Now, the other part that I think is probably equally or more important is your informal process. Okay, if you're saying one thing in the school district and another thing downtown, that's a problem. And your staff, everybody's got to be in that same page, understanding that, if we want this thing to really work, we live in this community. Your voice matters, whoever it is. If you're down and you say good or bad about the school district, the person hearing it's going to think about that. So I think, first of all, the formal and informal communication is a part of this. So with staff, no different. You've got to come up with some type of formalized structure, systems, meetings to meet with staff so they know that if they have some concerns, whether it's in the union, et cetera, that they can express those. And then that informal route is you build relationships, you walk. The nice thing about being here, which is interesting, is that the superintendent is in this building. When you're off on your own, like I was, you have to consciously get in your car, you have to consciously go to a building. Here, you just get up and walk around, and that's kind of cool. Now, I do know there could be some days that may not be great for other reasons, but I believe just being able to walk around and be is such a huge advantage for everyone's going to be here. And you should take advantage of that. Much is gained by informal conversations and connections. Because that's really what people are looking for. You said this, but what do you say in private? Do they match? And they better darn well.
How would you describe your ideal working relationship with the board's trustees?
Well, we always get along, and it's always an 8-0 vote, right? I think early on, it would be interesting because you get into these situations and you understand the design of a school board is to actually protect and to take care of your trustees of the district, right? You're supposed to be representing a community. So as I've gotten, when you're young, very young superintendent, you just want to get those votes to pass by, but whatever. Then as you get older, you realize, well, maybe we need to talk about that. Maybe there's something missing. Maybe a little bit of productive conflict is exactly what we need right now to get through this. And it takes some time to get there and get used to that. So I think for me, the working relationship with the board is good communication. I want to be authentic with you. I hope you're authentic with me. Nobody has time for wondering, well, what do you really mean by that? Now, people ask me my political views, that gets a little tough because I don't want to go out on a limb. I just want to kind of say, look, my job is to be the administrator of a school, not to elect somebody. But at the end of the day, my job is to support what you guys see as a vision and provide you other ideas. So my working relationship is really contingent on you. I've had board members that want to meet once a week, call me all the time. Some that say, please email me. Some just tell me when I get to the board meeting. So I discourage that tell me when I just get to the board meeting because it's really hard to make informed decisions if you haven't thought about the problem a little bit. Most of us can't look at a complex problem in about a minute or two, come up with a solution. And if you can, there's other jobs out there for you should seek because you can make a lot more money. So I would encourage that you become informed, work with me, tell me if you see something, especially in that first year. I mean, that relationship's there's got to be a lot of back and forth until that trust is built and you start to see what I'm about, what you're about, and we can anticipate each other's thoughts a lot. Now, that being said, I think the board's got to be a working board. You've got to make hard decisions and you got to have great debates.
What is the most important job of the superintendent and what is the best use of your time?
I think I'm dwelling on this, but if your relationships are not solid, staff, community board, that's the, what they say, the bird in the coal mine, what is it? The canary in the coal mine. That's a problem. So for me, you have a lot of metrics out there, but how are my relationships going with my principals, with my union president, with, if you guys have a PTA or a parent group, with the board? I'm constantly thinking about that. Where are we? Are we in a place where we can really talk about things? Are you gonna tell me, am I gonna tell you things I need to hear? So that's number one for me, and I think number one for any superintendent. You think about it, if you don't have that trusting relationship, what do you have? You know, you've got kind of a weird game is what you got. So, for me, that's an important thing. Now, past that, there's lots of metrics to look at. How are we doing, you know, academically? Where do we want to be athletically, et cetera? So, but I think the foundation that I put my most time is my relationships with you, with the community, with the staff. The rest of the stuff is still important, but if you get that right, you're going to be in good shape.
Thank you. We have a high functioning curriculum team that has been doing an incredible job of updating our curriculum and its selection process. What do you see your role with this team, and how would you support them?
You know, I think it's against collaboration, and if I've been in, I was a curriculum director at one point in time. And again, that's where those PLCs really come into play, that teaming concept. My role would be to observe. I don't really want to add. I mean, if you've got a good thing going, I'm there to watch and observe it. If I have some thoughts, I'd probably save them and maybe ask somebody in private later, like, okay, have you thought about this? Just to learn more about it. So I think out of the gates, my first thoughts would be to learn about your process to start with. What does that look like? What do you do? How do you get there? I have thoughts on how I would develop curriculum, but it doesn't mean they're all fine or right. I'm curious what other people do and how they do it. And maybe 10 years ago, it was different than it is now. I don't know. But I mean, in Hamilton, I was an overseer. I would talk with the admin team. I would listen what they had to say, and I'd throw my 2 cents in if I thought I had to. I'd go to meetings. I'd participate, but if they were doing the work, let them do the work.
What challenges do you see for public education and the Stevensville School District in particular, and how would you address them?
Okay, the things I've heard about, and if I'm wrong, I apologize. I know enrollment and having competing districts is an issue for Stevensville, and wanting to get students to say, okay, why, you know, can we get you back? I think that's an issue. So public education in general, I think there's I'll use the word an evolutionary mismatch that has occurred since education starts and where we're going. You know, I think if people understand the true foundations of education 120 years ago, we're to separate groups of people out, the doers and the thinkers. That was the grand design. And that worked wonderfully until about the 80s, when all of a sudden dropping out is not a very good option anymore. My dad was a high school dropout. He worked for the smelter. Great career. Those aren't that really easy to get anymore. So we have to think through better about, not every kid's probably going to go to college. Okay, fine. So how do we help them where they're going to go next so they can be successful? How do we show them options and to create a lifestyle that's successful for them? So I think what education has to do is become more attuned and individualized for students to a degree, and give them more expansive opportunities to be successful, to think more creatively. You know, the system was designed in a way, and I'm not saying it's all bad, but it's very structured, very regimented, right? Very, very rare in life, you have a situation where time is the constant and learning is the variable. In your jobs, do you really want that happening with somebody that's going to drive a big haul truck, you know, CDL license, et cetera? We've got to flip that back to learning is the constant, time is the variable. We want you to learn something specifically. We got to figure out different and creative ways to make that happen. So I think that's a big paradigm shift. And then I think just looking at how do we create more and more options so that kids stay invested in schools and see that as a real pathway for themselves. I think you'll connect with the community better too. The community goes, oh, wait a minute, you've got really cool options for these kids now. Your CT program is wonderful, by the way. You know, I got a tour of that. That's something to really hang your hat on and to really build on as a great pathway. My son he loves going to the wood shop. It's a favorite thing to do. It's his senior project. I think he got away with them because of who I am, but he's building me a dining room table. It's really cool. That's a senior project. I'm surprised. I guess again, I probably got a favor because he, you know, but it's really cool. He sends pictures of it every day, and you know, here's this kid who's in AP classes, but his favorite thing to do is go in the wood shop and work and stuff. So I think coming back to the question, one of the biggest challenges is we need to capture and keep our community support. So the first question is, why have we lost it? And you better have a handle on that and take some time to think about it. And then also, how do we show the community that what we're doing is really great for you and your kids in a long-term society? And the downstream effects of kids being successful in careers means they're not on other entitlements. They're not on other programs. They are successfully taking care of themselves as individuals and families. So I think that's a message we got to put out there better. I'm not paying attention to time.
We're doing good. We're doing good. Yep. Two more questions here. So, share with us some of your ideas around how you judge your own effectiveness as a superintendent, and how would you expect the board to evaluate your work? Two-part question.
You know, the best evaluation process I had my first 4 or 5 years in Hamilton, our mission and vision and our goals were tied to, that was my job description, more or less. This is what we're doing. Da-dink, 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 da-dink. That makes it really easy. Otherwise, you know, then we tried other things. After that went away, we tried the laissez-faire, evaluate Tom on anything. Well, geez, I mean, from a superintendent perspective, it goes all over the place. So I think there could be a blend with that. I think having some concrete, okay, here's some benchmarks this year. We want to get here. When we talk about that, how realistic is it? What are the steps? What will it look like? And, you know, whatever number it is, you pick it 3, 4, 5, 6, and what are those things? And then I think you could also leave room for those soft skills. Okay, so you got through those 4 things, but what did that look like? How's the staff doing? How's the community doing? Sure, we made all those marks, but now you've got another problem. You lost trust. You lost communication. So I think there's a balance with all of this. So what was the other part of this?
How would you expect the board to evaluate?
Or like myself, you know, for me, it's a funny thing. Like, how do you really, I mean, for my own personal evaluations, I do set some goals. Like, I hope we get these things done this year. I hope this happens. This is my metric. And then if we make them, and again, if we do a stronger team, we did it, but we're kind of cranky with each other. Well, what good does that do? So I always like, do we accomplish the task, and do we feel like we're a stronger team yet? So I kind of set my own goals for the year. You know, like last year was to get the Bitterroot Public Charter School in place, to get it up and running, and build enthusiasm around it, and we did.
Are there any things that you would like us to know about you that have not been covered in our interview this far?
You know, I just wanted to know about the Western thing. If you have more questions on that, please ask. Trust me, I talked to a couple board members. I go, I know, not you guys. It's like, it's just one of those things that just, you know, I'm probably a free spirit. I looked out ahead and said, I'm not gonna do this forever. So do something different. So that's anything about me other than that. I think I've said a lot about myself today. I hope to be somewhere for a while, wherever it's going to be next. I don't see any value in going somewhere for 2 years. You know, now I realize you have to earn the contract. You don't just get a 5-year contract. But my mindset is to go somewhere and be there for a while. That's how you really get things done. Oh, I like to fly fish. I just bought a German short hair. Drives me crazy. He's 7 months old, and I've never seen a dog with that kind of energy and intellect ever. And I have to really plan ahead my days. I've created a problem. I love outdoors. I try to get outside as much as I possibly can. So if I'm not here on cross country ski, I was teasing with Bia that I used to downhill ski a lot. I had knee surgery just recently. So I've been cross country skiing. Maybe next year I'll get back into downhill. I try to get outside as much as I possibly can. I like going to farmers market, stuff like that. I'll be a part of your community. They might not recognize me because I'll be in a ball cap and a t-shirt, but you know, they will sooner or later.
In the spirit of that last question, and in the spirit of Dr. Course's answer with that, is there anything anybody would want to follow up with?
And Tom is fine. I just want you guys to know that. Don't put, I asked you not to call me doctor.
We have a restructuring of the business office that's going on. So it's the time, I think, that is required for our superintendent is a little bit more at this particular time than usual.
Yep.
Does that time constraint concern you at all? Do you
No.
have Liberation.
Not at all. In fact, I've long, obviously, as a business manager, I think what you're getting is someone who's pretty skilled in finance. Now we'll see what she says, but I think that's one of my strengths. I had to become that way. If you're going to become one of the highest paid districts in the state, you have to have handle on your numbers. I promise you that. In fact, even if you didn't have to have the time, I'd put the time in to make sure I would be spending some time to really get to understand everything you spend your money on and why.
I'm very interested in seeing as much as possible a seamless transition from one administration of superintendent to the next. How would you help facilitate that with Dave leaving and if you were hired, you coming on board?
Start me tomorrow if you want to. Really?
Reed?
Well, negotiate.
Oh, okay.
I do know Dave. We've talked at length, and so ironically, I mean, it would be kind of interesting. We could kill two birds with one stone. I'm sure he'll have questions about where I came from and vice versa. So I don't think that's going to be much of an issue personally. I know Dave pretty well and the superintendent group here, and I think they're all pretty dedicated folks. So, but as far as like, if you want to put something structured in place, I'm open to any options, And I realize with budgets, you can't bring somebody on ahead of time, but I'd come on ahead of time, probably even volunteer, yes, within reason. As long as PA doesn't tell me I'm breaking the law, I'll do what I can. I had to contract me $1 so that I can actually have real conversations, something like that.
Well, we thank you. Thank you sincerely for your time. I think that concludes our questions. Is there anything else? All right. So,
Thank you, guys.
all right. Thank you, Don.
Appreciate it. Good luck.
Perfect.
We'll do the next one right at 5:30.
Yeah.
Run over to Bethel.
Yes.
I have a sample. Okay.
Do we have to recess or anything? No, for sure or no? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and just honor the time that we posted because we put it in the newspaper, we put it on social media, so we're just stretch for a second and then stay right on the bottom of the hour for all the interviews rather than start the next one. Yeah. All right, thanks, folks. It's coming up on 5:30, so we'll go ahead and get started with our second interview of the evening. Before we do that, would ask that, as our attendance in this room grows and we get more people, it would be fantastic if, we could all, including myself, will speak up a little bit as we ask questions as a courtesy to all those who are in attendance tonight. So we'll ask our questions a little bit louder. We'll do the same format as before. And, we're thrilled with our second interview, tonight to have, John Conan. So as with our first interview, we'll let our nameplates speak for themselves, introduction wise. We'll each ask a question and, you'll get a chance to answer every question that's in front of you. All candidates will. And so we'll start off by, if you tell us a little, we know about you from an application. We all have your application in front of us, but members of our audience may not know. Or is there anything else you'd like to tell us about yourself?
Sure. Before I start, just making sure that you said answer all questions, and I have an hour to do that.
If it takes more, it takes more. It's
Okay.
important that you'll answer all.
Okay, just making sure. I'm John Conan. I am the current elementary assistant principal and current curriculum director here in Stevensville. I have absolutely loved coming to this district. The people that I have worked with, both in the classroom and community members that I've met out talking with parents and families has made this a great transition for me from being a high school principal for the last 2 years before this in Columbia Falls. And prior to that, I was a superintendent in Corvallis for a couple of years. My longest stint was in Great Falls, Montana, as an elementary principal for 11 years. I've been an instructional coach, K through 8 in the Great Falls public school system. Have also been an elementary teacher, taught 2nd grade, 5th grade, and I taught middle school 6th grade also. Have 10 years between instructional coaching and teaching for outside or in the classroom. And then this is my 17th year of being an administrator, either being an elementary, middle, high school principal, and superintendent. So that is a little bit about me. I guess what's not in my application packet are some of the things why I guess I love this valley. Automatically, it's my wife is a high school teacher here in the valley in Hamilton. I have wanted to get closer to her. I was dating her from a distance and decided that I really wanted to be in the valley. So that was my first reason for moving down here. Second, I knew people in the Stevensville School District, and I'd known people that were here when I was previously in Corvallis as well, and got to work with some and have known some since I was a little kid. And I have really wanted to get to experience Stevensville. This was a great opportunity with the position that offered me with my current position, and I've absolutely loved all of it. So.
Okay, what drew you to apply for this position?
Sure, kind of answered that a little bit in the first one, but obviously my wife lives here in the valley. I like to stay in the valley. I was hesitant at first to jump into this position for superintendent again, but I really believed in what we've been doing for the last 6 months. I really got into what the admin team and Dave Tennis and the teachers are doing here. The vision that has been created centered around teacher clarity and building trust has been two of the things I think that really inspired me to want to continue that vision going forward. I am excited about applying for the position. As you know, I was superintendent in Corvallis. I signed that contract I don't know, a week or two before COVID hit, right? And then had to deal with right away losing 171 students and close to $800,000 in budget right after the mask mandate was put into place. And so I had to deal with that right away as a brand new superintendent coming into COVID. And so I really feel like trying it again, barring any pandemic, I think I would like to really get after it and really see what I can do with a great team that we have here in Stevensville.
What's the most important first steps a superintendent should usually take in a new district?
Definitely. I passed out to every one of you, a 90-day entry plan. I got to thinking about it. It's really, if I'm chosen, it's really not a 90-day entry plan because that's 90 days after July 1st. I guess with me, you get an extra 125 days until July 1st, right? So this is actually like a 210-day plan. I think that's one of the bonuses is that I'm going to be able to carry on and learn more about where we've been this year and to be able to get ready to take on the position July 1st running. Some of the things that I believe that a new superintendent has to do is really work on understanding the governance of the school board itself. I've been in a couple different school districts now, and are some differences in governance between how the board is ran, if they have subcommittees or not, and how the interactions between the superintendent and the school board are. And I think that my first step, obviously, is to build those relationships with the school board to learn how the school board governance is ran and how to keep creating great relationships between the board and the school. The second thing is diving into student achievement and understanding that. And that's one of the main reasons why we're here is student achievement. And so really diving in and looking at metrics that will help tell us how our students are doing and getting those out to not only our staff and families, but getting them to our public too. What are those metrics that we really want to hold as a value going forward? So I'll be going through all of our data that we collect and finding those metrics that are going to be easily communicable to all of us. 3 is really working hard to understand the vision and strategic plan on where we're going. All along, building that vision and strategic plan together is a piece of building relationships all throughout. I think when we can all sit down together and understand kind of where our end goal is, we can continue to be clear about how we're going to get there. And just like we're working on this initiative in the school called Teacher Clarity, same can be said with how we can develop that relationship between the school board and myself, really working on clarity of how we're going to communicate our successes. 4 is taking a look at the systems. Like what systems do we have? Organizational effectiveness. School is full of systems that are all interconnected. Looking at those systems is something that I've been lucky enough to be in a AA school district to understand what we don't have that they have, because obviously they have more people and more systems. I've also been in a Class C school. That's where I started off as a principal, where I was full-time principal, full-time athletic director, and half-time superintendent. So I had to learn some of those roles as a brand new administrator too, from a Class C standpoint. So I also know what it's like to work in systems that don't have all the people that maybe a AA does, or a system of organization that is missing. And so trying to understand that piece and know we may have to leverage our resources differently, proposing different aspects that are important to make sure that we are meeting the goals of our strategic plan will be necessary. And then number 5 is really working on, I know I talked about relationships before and it's all throughout, but really looking at the climate of the school district. Like, where are we at now? Like how do our community interact with our school? How does our staff interact with our community? What are some things that we can do to continue to keep building those relationships between the school and our community? In the plan, those are the 5 main categories. I have subsets of all those due to time. I'm not going to go into that, but I gave that 90-day entry plan to you guys to kind of show you some of the things that I feel would be important for me to do. That's going to help connect me with, our community, you guys, our staff, and our students.
What are your 4 greatest strengths as a K-12 administrator?
I think number 1 is culture. If you were to talk to staff, students, families in each of the school districts I've been in, I think you will find a solid reputation on working on relationships with people. I believe we can put any type of program in front of somebody, but if we don't have a relationship with them, it's not going to matter as much as what that relationship and how we can leverage those to be able to support our students. So I work hard at building trust with people. I believe trust is built in tiny moments where you are communicating with people. You say what you say you're going to do and you follow through. I think that's one way to build trust, and actually spending time with people and finding the time is difficult, but it is important in order to understand all your stakeholders. Number two, I feel like I work hard at communicating. I sometimes over communicate. I understand that piece of it, but I also know that the more you communicate, the more clear you become. And if you keep communicating, people know exactly, like I said before, where we are and where we're going to go. And so I really worked hard on communicating in all different types of mediums to be able to reach people like stakeholders in different facets, from social media to newsletters to push out notifications to letters home to videos. During COVID, one of the things we did was a weekly update on Facebook Live where families could call in and ask questions about COVID. And while I was on live, kind of scary to do it on live because you never know what type of questions you're going to get when they come. But it was something that I felt like our community really needed at that time. So I'm willing to try new communication avenues to be able to reach people as best we can. Three, I think, is the servant leadership style of communicating. Servant leadership is all about empowering the people around you. That's one of the things I guess I did love about Dave Tennis was the fact that he was really good at listening, really good at taking information from people, and then giving his input, but then going back and empowering the people around him. And so I really felt like our admin team felt empowered and felt supported from that. And I feel like that's one of the things that I really work hard at with servant leadership, is to be able to serve the people and to be able to empower the people around us. Four is resources. I feel like that's one of the things that I will bring to the table is, if I don't know it, and I will openly admit there are many things I don't know, but I will find out about it. An example, I have a budget book that I created each year that I was at Corvallis. I gave it to Ben, and Ben can pass it down. One of the things I came in, I was an elementary principal, and I went to superintendent, right? So I'd only been in charge of managing a $70,000 budget before as an elementary principal, and then coming into a district that was right around 14 million was kind of a big jump. And so what I did was took it on myself to learn as much as I could about the budget. And one of the things I did is create a product that I could also learn about the budget, but also push out to the board and the community. In this budget book, it has budget history from the last 10 or 15 years, and it goes through levy history, bond history, goes through and explains each of the funds and what they are for. It also gives a budget forecast and prediction on where we're going to go. It helps give trustees and community all the facilities and demographics, ages of the buildings, when they were last done. So basically, this budget book was something that the board members liked because they could bring it to the budget meetings. They could also bring it to the board meetings, and to be able to have that at their fingertips, to be able to look back, hey, what happened 7 years ago, right? If you look in Corvallis, you can look at one of the ones, for example, is transportation. All of a sudden, you see this huge jump in transportation a couple of years ago, or it's about 8 years ago now. And if you know anything about Corvallis, 8 years ago, they took on their own buses. They started buying their own buses. And so that's why the transportation fund went up. And so what this does is it creates a story of data at your fingertips that you're going to be able to use to help support you when you help make decisions. And that's one of the things that I would do here. Same thing, dig into all of our data for the last 10 years, create a budget book like that to be able to bring forward. So it's another resource that we can use. On top of that, a lot of resources from, been lucky enough to be a part of several groups that have some of the top people in education, in leadership, curriculum, instruction, assessment, differentiation, can name quite a few, but have some of these people at my fingertips to be able to ask questions of, because as I said before, I don't know everything, and I feel like I gotta do research to be able to find out what I do need to know and who I need to go to. So those are the four things I would say. I'll close it up with building culture and trust, a communicator, servant leader, and ability to get resources, find resources.
Tell us about your experience creating a district budget and utilizing various funding sources.
Definitely. As you know, Montana's funding model is a per pupil funding model based on A&B. Most of the money comes from the number of students that we have in our school. And so one of the things in that budget book takes a look at enrollment over time, because you can directly make a connection from enrollment over time compared to how much money you receive. And so one component of the budget is that A&B allotment with the number of students that we have. Another one is a basic entitlement piece of we get direct state aid from the state. It gives us money as well. Between those two accounts, and then there's several other budgeted funds that make up the budget. And so roughly, I think I last looked, it was 84% of the elementary district in our school is, at the elementary is salaries and benefits. At the high school, it's about 79%. And so that leaves you roughly in the general fund, which is the main fund that we really work on, is anywhere from 15 or 16% to 20%. That's what we're actually dealing with. It's not salaries and benefits. And so lots of things that we need to do to create that budget. We actually have lots of state deadlines to be able to get information into the state. We have 2 different collection days for that A and B for students, one in October and one in February, where we get the student average number of belonging. After that first one in October, we can start creating a preliminary budget and start talking about what we need to do if we need to go start looking at going for a levy or not after the one in October. Obviously, the one in February is going to give us a lot more information to be able to set that budget up a lot better. Some of the things that I did when I helped build the budget in Corvallis was take a look at all of the accounts and look at a 3-year average to find out where the expense is trending. As you probably know, the amount of inflation for a lot of those expenses is outweighing the amount of money that we are getting from the state. So with that, we got to start taking a look at other flexibilities within our accounts to be able to find more money. And so one of the things that we did in Corvallis is that we had a lot of our special ed paraprofessionals were being paid out of the general fund. And so we were able to talk about increasing our tuition fund to be able to help pay for some of those sped paras to take them out of the general fund. And so this is an example of looking for flexibilities and looking for ways we can use some of our funds and permissive funds to be able to find other places to find money for that general fund. Another one we looked at was the percentage of our administrators. How much were the administrators paid out of transportation fund or out of the general fund? And so we created a percentage across the board for each of our administrators to take out of other funds other than the general fund, which frees up more money for the general fund. So that's the second example. Then in a district like ours, where we have 2 districts, we also have a multi-district account that's between both districts that we can be able to funnel money back and forth or JV money back and forth between the accounts to help support one another. During COVID, one of the things I did to help support Corvallis was the fact that since we had so many students that were that had left, 171, almost $800,000, we were able to pay our administrators whenever they worked on COVID. We had to track it. A lot of other AA districts did this as well. We were able to put final money into a multi-district account. And we almost had $1 million in that multi-district account to help support Corvallis through getting those 171 students back. So on top of all that, you need to involve stakeholders. You need to involve your stakeholders. You need to make sure you're doing budget committee meetings and inviting the public in to give them information about where we're at in the budget, working towards transparency and accountability of those funds, understanding the relationships you have with the school board. You guys are the main ones that are connected to the community, and I gotta have a good relationship with you to be able to talk with you to see how it feels like where we're at with the budget. I'll get you as much information as I can, not only through the budget workbook, but also through hopefully monthly updates on the budget on where we're at. I feel a lot more confident. It can be very tricky to explain school funding laws because they're ever changing because of the legislature all the time. And so that's another piece that has become evident. That's part of budgeting is how we're telling the story of our district, because we need to figure out how to keep getting more kids here. And so anyway, that's just a couple facets of what I would do to help build a budget. We obviously have deadlines. August 25th is a deadline that it has to be approved for the budget for the year. All throughout the year, though, we have certain aspects along the way that have to be finished, like the permissive levies in February, which you guys should be working on right now and talking about what we can do, if we need to increase those or not for our public. And so obviously it all goes back to our mills are with our mill value for our land property taxpayers as well. So that's just a little bit about some of the aspects that I would use to be able to help build the budget.
So, describe your experience with prioritizing the needs of the district with budget realities.
Great question. Exactly what I'm talking about right here. So when we build that strategic plan together with our stakeholders, we need to help leverage our money that we can leverage to be able to help meet those goals of our strategic plan. And I think that is probably one of the hardest things. Like I said before, the amount of money we're getting from the state and local taxpayers is not keeping up with inflation. And at some point, we do need our state to be able to find a different funding model rather than putting it back on to our local taxpayers. I think it's really difficult in the Valley from my experience of living here, that it's really hard to go for a levy and get it to be able to pass. I noticed we're at about 86% of our budget, which means we have about 14% that we can still levy. We have quite a bit of room to be able to levy. It's just the fact of how do we sell that story? How do we connect those needs back to the strategic plan and to be able to bring that to you guys and to be able to bring that to our voters?
Thank you, John. What is your vision for Stevensville schools? And what do you believe is the best way to get students and faculty and community members involved in that vision?
I heard an interesting quote recently, how there's a lot of superintendents out there that act and look more like a CEO, chief executive officer. But I guess one superintendent really stuck out to me who said we should really be talking about this position as more of as a chief vision officer. And so that's the person that helps not create the vision, but or make the vision, but get stakeholders to actually work to build that vision together. And I feel like that is my main goal. I wouldn't apply for this job if we weren't doing the things we're doing the last 6 months. We've been working on teacher clarity and the ability to create clear pathways for our goals. And we've just started going after it. We've started looking at creating essential standards. We'll go on to some of the assessment pieces, get resources next. I bring that up because it gives a vision of where we're going and what we're doing. And I have fully believed in the process that we've done so far. We have good people at the administrative level that understand where that vision is going. I think Mr. Tennis has done a great job of making that vision clear on where we're going. And I guess that's another reason why I wanted to continue that process. So my job will be to tell the story of our district, tell the story of what we're doing with curriculum. Just yesterday, you might have saw I pushed out the fact of asking for the public to come in and look at curriculum before we get it voted on by you guys. And so it's these opening up this communication between our community and our students to be able to create that vision together and being transparent about it and in doing so. One is, and the second one is me getting out into the schools. I can sit in that office and, create documents forever on Google Docs. That's not going to get us anywhere. The best thing for my buck is to be able to meet and talk with our stakeholders, one out in the community, but also our teachers and our staff and our admin, being able to see and speak to things that are going on in our school, because it's that piece of communication going out to you guys and out to the public that is going to continue to increase buy-in from our public on the things that we are doing well. Because I'll tell you what, when you walk through the hallways and go through the classrooms, man, high 90% are things that you want to see replicated because it's great stuff going on. And we just need to continue to keep telling that story. So creating that vision together through getting out, and bringing people in, and as well as setting goals for our strategic plan, I think is the best way that we're going to be able to help make that vision come alive.
Thank you.
What strategies would you support and or implement to maintain and increase enrollment here at Stevens?
Probably hearing a little bit of a theme, but talk a little bit about culture, school culture. Part of school culture is being able to tell that story and building trust with our people. One of the things I think to increase enrollment is to know all the great things going on. How many people know what type of facility we have, for example, in our shop, in our welding area? What type of projects do they know are going on in our elementary classrooms? And so being able to tell that story to you guys and to our public will hopefully continue to increase students wanting to come to Stevensville. There are so many assets in our district and great teachers in our district and staff members. I think we have a great foundation to really take off.
What experience do you have with PLC Plus?
Right, so the two main models out there right now are Solution Tree PLC and PLC Plus. Two different times in my career, I was trained by Solution Tree on the PLC model. I've been in schools that have had PLC, almost since I started education, but I would say at least 18 years now of being in a school that has solid PLC. This is my first year of PLC Plus, and so we were trained from a trainer from Corin who owns the rights to PLC Plus, and I started taking a look at, I think all of us did, taking a look at the differences between the old PLC and the new PLC Plus model. And so what we've noticed is that the old PLC kind of dealt with stuff over a long-ranging time over years, where a PLC Plus model is more about trying to find solutions in the meetings that we do in a quicker sense. And I think that's what makes PLC a little bit stronger, is the amount of time that We adjust to the current needs within the school, and we use that model to team together. The whole concept and idea behind PLC Plus is that better together, right? Better together than doing it in silos and individually. Heard a great quote about the fact that we don't want a whole bunch of independent contractors. We have a whole bunch of independent contractors. Everyone's doing a great job in their rooms, but everyone's doing their own thing, and they're all like oaring in the boat at the same time. And so what we want to do is create an environment where we're teaming together to be able to put the oars in the boat and go in the correct and the right direction all together at the same time. And so that's what I think the PLC Plus model in the first 6 months that we implemented and put in place. I get to see it almost every day when I go into, we adopted the model for our grade level meetings as well. And we meet weekly with our grade levels to use that same model to help solve problems that we have within our school.
Building strong relationships with staff, administration, teachers, and the community are critical for the success of any district. How do you plan to develop and maintain meaningful connections with each of these groups, ensuring open communication, trust, and collaboration?
I think there are several things I can do to help create, sorry to put on my glasses, create meaningful connections between all these groups. One is the ability to have part of the 90-day entry plan is listening sessions. So being able to listen to different groups out with our stakeholders and building that trust to really hear what they are saying about what's going on in our schools, what needs do they have in our community, and then how can we meet those needs back in our school. Being able to spend time with the different facets and groups within our community and stakeholders. There's something said, I have been in a school district where the superintendent leaves at 4:30 or 5 and doesn't attend events and doesn't make it out of the administrative building. And so a lot of people are like, who is that person? Okay. The great thing about Stevensville is we're all on one campus. And so like I can do a loop in an hour and be in every single school. Like today we did I've been in so many interviews over my career where we did interviews around in different schools, and it took most of the day to go around and do it. Well, today we did a tour in about 40 minutes and we made it through every single school. And so that showing up and being visible and talking with people, the math teacher in a high school knows me by name and can call me and ask me questions and collaborate on stuff. The principals know I'm in their building. I'm walking around with them, and we're looking at how we can continue to improve instruction. Same thing with community groups. One of the things that when I was in Great Falls, I started being a part of several different community groups that we could help leverage those relationships to help support the kids within our school. I sat on the CLASA board, was part of United Way. There's just several groups that in that system that really helped have great communication and connections. And so that's what I need to learn more about in our own community here in Stevensville. Like, what groups do we have? What civic groups do we have? I got to show up and attend and be there and get my face out there so they know what we're working on. Another aspect of it is, I was glad to see this when I went through the tour today. I haven't asked specifically, and those will be questions I ask coming up, but like how many partnerships do we have with businesses within our community that actually do stuff for our school, or we do stuff with them, right? So we are building some stuff we have in the ag department for building a shed, right? And we have a company that we're working with to build those for. Those are the type of partnerships that we need to continue to keep looking at. People out there are wanting to hire locals. And so we need to be able to know what jobs are open out there, which kids might be interested here. But we do that by getting our kids out and doing some internships or externships. We also do it by bringing people in. And we bring people into our school to, the day that I got to be a part of the, Career Day, right before like Christmas break. To me, that was one of the best days that I've been a part of, to see kids excited about wanting to get out and get a job, right? Be college and career ready. And so it's events like that, not only at the high school, but all the way in all levels of school, where we can connect with our community through their organizations, through the businesses, that I believe will continue to keep building those meaningful connections.
How would you describe your ideal working relationship with the board trustees?
This is an important piece of the job, right? This is like, I'm not the conduit between teaching and staff and the community, is through the board. I feel this is the most vital relationship that a superintendent and a board can have, is that relationship between superintendent and board. I've worked a lot. I've been in a position, I'm not going to say where I was at, but I was in a position where I had individual board members giving me directives separately outside of a board meeting, and it made it really difficult, especially through COVID, to decide, what to do. And so I really had to try to set some boundaries and say, hey, let's collectively do this through the board meeting to give me directives to be able to do this. Because sometimes some of the directives were going against each other, and I was, as a superintendent, trying to weigh which board member was more important because of what they told me. And so, again, when I talk about in the entry plan about what's important first, is deciding about those relationships between the board and the governance of how we're going to be able to get along and move our vision forward. So that relationship between the board and myself is extremely important. And obviously, I want to have individual relationships with every single one of you. I want to know who your kids are even better. I want to know, the pizza on Saturdays, I might show up, kind of thing. I want to know, what your vision of education is for what you believe in. What was your experience like in school when you went through school? And how does that weigh into what you're doing now as a board member? And what do you see through your kids and through other kids in our community? What do you see their experience as? Because sometimes, I'll admit it, we as educators get into this isolation within our school, and we don't see from an outside aspect sometimes of some of the things happening in our community or with our kids or certain things going on. And so that's where we got to have that open, honest communication. So again, I'll summarize. I think I need to, as a board member, as a superintendent, have individual relationships with each one of you, but also have a relationship collectively where we use the governance rules that we have within the school board to be able to determine what my job is, where we're going, that it's super clear, it's out in the open, and we go forward from there.
What is the most important job of the superintendent, and what is the best use of your time?
I think I've said this a couple times. I think the most important part of my job is telling the story, right? I have to tell the story to you guys, tell the story to our public, and what we're doing, right? We're going to decide on some metrics that we believe are important to us. And that's maybe the quantitative side of all this, is that we do have some metrics that I'm going to be judged on and we're going to be judged on. But it's also the qualitative side of, like, what are the stories? What's the over story to what's going on in our school? What are some things that we're seeing is changing in our school for the better? What are some things we need to continue to work on? And so I feel like the most important part of my job is to be able to tell both the quantitative and qualitative stories that we have within our school. Again, my job is to carry out the vision of what we set as a strategic plan and put it in place. We have unbelievable administration and teachers that can help continue to bring that forward, and that's kind of my job, is to be able to help support them through my servant leadership style, to be able to make sure they have the resources they need to be able to do their job. So, to summarize, I think my job is to be able to tell the story of our district. Like, how are we doing? What are we doing? What can we do better? What are we doing? What can we do? What's going to take some time? What's going to take some extra resources?
Thank you. We have a high functioning curriculum team that has been doing an incredible job updating our curriculum and its selection process. What do you see your role with this team and how would you support them?
Wow, who is this guy?
I knew that wasn't gonna work well, but I had to.
Wow, the great thing is that we have a vision of where we're gonna go. And we have like stair steps to be able to get to that vision. And the stronger that vision is, it doesn't matter if we have some missing, if some new people come in, if the people that are here believe in that vision of where we're going, we can put in a new superintendent, even though it's hard. Superintendent is tough to replace all the time, right? Because they might have a different agenda than the last person before them. But you get a new principal. You have people that are already on board with the vision, and we need to take time to get them caught up and showing them where we've been, where we're at now, and then where we're going to go. So I believe since we have a vision of where we're going to go, we have a set plan. As superintendent, I can be able to help bring that forward to continue with that aspect of it. Ultimately, we have the curriculum director job is just a stipend. So technically, the curriculum director is still going to be part, I feel, of the superintendent's job as is anyway, to be able to help move that forward and where we're going. So I will work alongside anyone that we choose to select for that job, for sure.
Thank you, John. What challenges do you see for public education and the Stevensville School District in particular, and how would you address them?
Obviously, the funding model is, I've talked about it twice already tonight, but for a third time, our funding model in Montana is not adequate. And you will see in the next several years here, more districts that are going to be taking that on. If we don't find another funding source, because right now we're putting a lot of our funding in all these communities back onto our local taxpayers. And it's so difficult to go to our local taxpayers who in the valley here are paying such either high rent or high mortgage and living costs down here to be able to ask them to continue to put money towards a levy. Though at some point we're going to need to ask if that is one of our last resources that we haven't tried. We're going to have to collectively come together and decide how we're going to be able to sell that situation to our community. That we're at a point with where we're at with funding that the inflation is definitely more than what we're getting from our state and federal funds. And so I believe that is probably one of the hardest pieces. I think that schools like Stevensville are going to have to figure out. I mean, there's only so much we can continue to be flexible with our accounts. There's only so many grants we can try to go for. Sometimes we're not even eligible for certain grants because of our free and reduced population is too high or too low. Just happened to us recently, and that's why I bring that up, because we were too low on free and reduced to be able to apply for another reading grant. So we're going to have to continue, one, to look for funding sources, but two, we're going to have to continue with that advocating at the state level for resources for our district too. We're also seeing a big push in public education where we have open enrollment and we have choice for schools, which is great. But we're also going to start seeing called, you've understand vouchers and Arizona has what they call it, the backpack law. The money for A and B follows the kid wherever the kid goes to school, whether it is a private school or whether it's a public school, but that money falls on. We have been playing in Arizona's playbook for the last 8 years, almost exactly, of what's been going on in Arizona, and we're starting to see a lot of the same things. So not to get political here, but I fear that once we continue to keep looking at this money being able to travel out of public funds for our schools, for public schools, that it's going to affect school districts across the state with the amount of funding that they receive. We just saw that with Senate Bill 310, I think, that got voted down here recently. But it's going to continue to come. It's going to continue to be looked at. There are several states across our nation that have, charter schools, and they have private schools that are funded with that backpack law. Wherever that kid goes to school, that money goes. And so I have family members, which is interesting, in Florida that will argue me that that's the best thing for us, right? They're on the other side of it. They're in outside of Orlando, and she says, John, you don't go to public schools here. We go to private schools here. I said, well, the money you get from the state, does it even cover your tuition? Well, no, not all the way, but it helps give us a discount for that. But she says all the people that can go to the private schools. And so we have some great conversations. But so these things are happening across the nation, and I know Montana is heading down that road soon. And how are we going to come together as a community to be able to continue offering the great curriculum and instruction and staff for our students?
Thank you.
Two-part question here as we get close to wrapping up. Share how you would judge your own effectiveness as a superintendent. And part two, how would you expect the board to evaluate that same work?
Earlier, I talked about determining what metrics we want to look at. And I truly believe that those metrics that we choose as a district and as a school board, when we set goals, specifically in our I'm having a hard time saying tonight, strategic plan, are important to be able to use to tell the story. And so I feel like that's one piece of what my job is to, if we pick metrics, I would hope to see those metrics improve. I'm obviously talking about academic metrics. And so those are things that I'd like to bring forward and to continue the data discussion on how we're doing academically. There are obviously other metrics as well that we need to look at besides student achievement, like staff climate and community trust and all that. And so there are pieces that I've found in different surveys. I think one of the ones that we use that I have found the most powerful is Cognia. Cognia has surveys that they use, and we pay for Cognia right now that look at both at all of the different levels. They look at stakeholder trust with the community, with our school, takes a look at staff, climate, students even take a poll, and all those metrics, all that data goes together and are able to report out in different strands. And they are, to me, what I found is a great way to be able to write goals and use those metrics to determine, I feel like that's something that I should be held accountable to, are through those goals and metrics of our strategic plan. If we use Cognia, that's great. If we don't use that, then we need to decide what other metrics we're going to use. In the same sense, back and forth, the success of the board, I feel like how we do, like our performance is basically when we come to board meetings and how we do. I feel like the more information, and Dave started doing this too, like getting you guys information a week before your board meeting. How powerful is it to have the information a week ahead of time? So when you get to the board meeting, you already know a little bit about it, and you can speak to it and let our community know too, rather than coming to a board meeting, getting your information there, and then having to ask a lot of questions, and our board meetings go forever, and to our community, we look like we don't know really what we're doing, right? So the better I can inform you with all the information. I think not the length of the board meeting, but in essence, really, like if we're gonna have 4-hour board meetings all the time, and there might be sometimes we have to, I understand that piece of it, but if it's always 4 hours, maybe I'm not doing a good enough job of getting the information to you guys, answering questions that you might have before the board meetings. And so I feel like that's another metrics too, and how we determine how well the board is doing too. And I think the metrics that when you hire me, if you hire me, the metrics that I'm using to be able to determine my effectiveness that we're using is also a reflection on the board. You guys have chose to hire me. And then so it's kind of this back and forth relationship on how we're going to decide the effectiveness of both the board and with me too. So that it's interconnected.
Are there other things you would like us to know about you that has not been covered in this interview?
People have asked me, how long do you want to be here? How long do you want to stay? And that is a great question. Like, I want to stay in a positive working relationship as long as possible. But I also want you to know, like at the end of 2 years, like if you only give me a 2-year contract, if that's what you go with, and I'm not working out, just tell me and I'll step out. But like, if we have a positive relationship, our metrics are good and they're improving, let's continue that relationship as long as we can. If we have good data. You want someone in this position that is going to improve your metrics that you choose are important. I know it's going to be tough to do it year one, but guess what? And if you choose me, I have another 125 days to get ready to take that job on July 1st. And so I guess that's my selling point of being able to ask you guys that I am excited, and I'll leave that plan with you. If you want to look at that budget book, I'll leave the budget book here, but give it to Ben and I'll get it back from you, Ben, if that's okay. My wife is here. My wife's teaching. She's got several years left to get her 30 years. She's younger than me, so I feel like I wanted to at least get her 30 years. So we have several years left in the Valley, and I would love to be here.
Thank you. In the spirit of that last question and John's answers to us, is there anything else from a board member at this time? Right?
I have something. In the spirit of the relationships that you're talking about, John, and the culture that you want to build or want to continue to foster in Stevensville, I think I remember during COVID in 2019, a creative way that Corvallis handled Teacher Appreciation Week. Can you tell me if I'm correct in that and how y'all handled Teacher Appreciation Week in Corvallis during COVID?
Good question. So which school? We did a little bit different. We highlighted teachers in several different ways, I guess, by putting them onto Facebook. We had, I think we even did a red carpet celebration as they walked in and had kids and parents clapping for them as they came into school one year. I'll be honest, we did a lot of things over my years.
I think I heard or had seen, and I tried to find it and couldn't find it, that y'all maybe delivered gifts. Did y'all deliver on the bus to the teachers?
I was on that bus. Yes, I was. So that was one of the things. Like, there were several things we did, right? So that was really cool, was being able to get out. We took staff out to our special ed population and delivered gifts to our special ed students as our staff. That was really exciting and fun to get out to see kids after not seeing them for a long time. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Trustees? All right. Mr. Conan, sincere thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna shake everyone's hand if they're okay with shaking it. You're okay with shaking it?
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you.
All right, similar to last time, we're not gonna necessarily recess. We will just take these 5 minutes here to stretch a bit, and we'll be back on track at 6:30 PM. So continue with our third interview of the evening. uh, PM. Call our special meeting of the